This is Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy, the art of attracting, acquiring, and retaining talent. Here's Kathleen.
My guest this week is Dr. Rosina Racioppi. Rosina is the CEO and president of Women Unlimited, and for the last 25 years has worked with hundreds of Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies like Raytheon, Prudential, and Colgate to help them cultivate their female talent for leadership and C-suite positions. She's also the best-selling author of Relationships Matter: How Women Use Developmental Networks to Step into Their Power and Influence. Rosina, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Kathleen, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, I am too, and I'd like you to start by telling us a bit about your story and kind of really what drew you to pivot from your HR executive leadership career and to join Women Unlimited.
I would love to say that I had a specific career plan, but I think that my career was more born out of fortunate relationships that I developed over time. I always said that I was the reluctant HR person. I didn't have a degree in human resources. I had a degree in criminal justice. Saw my career going in a certain trajectory once I graduated from college, and then there was a recession when I graduated. And so the jobs that I originally were planning to target no longer existed. I had the good fortune, though, while I was in college, to work for ITT in their HR department. And I had
them.
Wonderful managers and leaders that gave me opportunities to learn and explore and do research. And so, I graduated from college without any job prospects. And my dad looked at me and said, well, you have a degree, figure it out. And so I did. I leveraged my experience to launch a career in HR. And I found that what enabled me to be an effective HR business partner is because I was so curious about the businesses that I was a part of. How did the practice of HR, and at the time that I started, it was actually called personnel, believe it or not. But how did our human capital practices help the companies be successful? And because I had that perspective, it allowed me to be a good partner and supporter of the business and be flexible in our approaches. Now, I should add, I was also rather young. I was on, when I was on the first management team, I wasn't quite 30. So I was the only woman on the team, and most of the other members of the management team had children my age. So you can imagine it was a challenge getting my voice heard. But all of these experiences kind of helped me gain comfort in positioning my ideas, gaining alignment with other leaders to my ideas, and advocating for myself. And so my HR career was in manufacturing, in the chemical business, in industries where I was usually one of the few women that were at the table. But I had the good fortune of working with really good leaders who valued the human capital practices and understood how having strong values in how we develop people and develop talent leads to a robust organization. And along the way, I met Jean Odd, who was launching Women Unlimited. And because of her relationships with our CHRO, I got to meet her. And that meeting by chance led to my introduction to Women Unlimited. The programs that Jean created spoke to, my experience as a woman in business, where often, there's challenges that we experience that are different than our male colleagues. And I love this idea of creating an environment for women safely to understand how they can learn how to be effective leaders and identify some of those areas where they might be creating their own barriers to their success. And so Jean and I created a professional friendship. I sponsored women in the program. I was a mentor in the program. And she saw something in me that as her business was growing, she offered me the opportunity to join her. And I must say, I love the idea of working with her because I have a passion around helping people find their spot in the garden, right? That spot in the organization where it's the job they love doing and it creates great impact. I'm also intrigued with businesses, as I said. So the idea of helping Jean grow the business was very inviting to me. And I'll add, my youngest daughter was, I think, 2.5 at the time. So I thought, well, this is great. I can have, feed my career and also my personal life at the same time. So it was like the perfect opportunity for me at the time.
Well, it sounds great. So I think you and I are from the same generation because when I graduated from college, I too was in that lovely recession, and my first career was in personnel, although you probably had a loftier role than I did because I typed -6 words a minute and got hired as the receptionist. So I was a very good salesperson. You explained a little bit about, where this passion for developing the female talent came from, but you also talked about, being the youngest woman at the table, the only woman at the table. You were in a predominantly male-dominated industry of manufacturing. What were some of those, the challenges that you faced during your corporate career, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, gosh. I think that sometimes ignorance is bliss, as I'll say. I have to credit my parents for instilling, I want to say confidence or clarity in, not being afraid to state your case, explain your point of view in a way that will help you contribute. So I had a lot of experiences as a younger person that gave me that confidence. And I think when I started working, I was just very curious around how others saw things. So I never went into a situation and said, this is what I think we needed to do. I always would start with trying to understand where the other person saw the issue, saw the situation, so I could then add my perspective to it, and hopefully the two of us, or the three of us, can create a solution, because that's really what you're doing primarily when you work in manufacturing and HR. You're solving problems with the business leaders. So I always approached it as a partner, and because of that, it allowed me to learn and grow. I will tell you, I had a moment early on in my career where I was walking through the plant with the head of our engineering department, and if you can visualize it, he was like 6'4". I'm tall, but I'm not quite that tall. And we're walking through the plant, talking about different situations. And he looked at me and he said, well, Rosina, do you know what your problem is? And I thought to myself, no, please do tell.
Yeah.
I don't know what prevented me from being sarcastic at the moment, but I just looked at him and I said, no, what's my problem? He said, well, everybody thinks they can do your job. And I thought for a moment, oh my goodness, he's right. I'm not really talking about kind of my thinking behind my idea. I'm not advocating for myself in a way that others can see the value I'm bringing to the table. And so that was a gift that he gave me, to not be assumptive, and we hear this from so many women, right? I just want my work to speak for me. Well, you don't really know what it's saying, and you don't really know if it's saying what you want it to say, what you need it to say to put things in the right pathway for the career that you're looking to create. And so that happened very early in my career, and I'm ever grateful, for a lot of these leaders who taught me lessons. I don't think that was their intentional lesson that they wanted to teach me, but it helped me when I'm in a meeting think about, what do I want people to know about what I bring to this organization in my role? And to make certain that I'm articulating it, that I'm advocating not only for myself, but for the needs that I see for my area, my department, etc.
I like what you said, that ignorance is bliss. I always say when you're sometimes we're young and dumb, we do some of the smartest things. So,
True.
for folks that are not familiar with your organization, what is Women Unlimited?
For the last 28 years, Women Unlimited has partnered with organizations. So our clients, if you will, our partner, are the companies that see as a value the need to have more women in their talent pipeline. So we provide external programs that women will attend with other women from other companies. And our programs are experiential development programs that are targeted to women at 3 different levels. So we have an early career program called Empower. We have a mid-career program called Lead, and we have an executive program called The Few. But all of our programs create this, what I would call a very safe environment to explore kind of the competencies, the skills and talent that they bring to the organization, and map out a career plan, what we call a roadmap for their career development. But it's not just about the sessions they attend on a monthly basis. It actually includes what we use as our framework is mentoring, education, and networking. So education is those competencies that we know through research and our experience are important for women at these levels. But the competencies are bookended by mentoring and networking, which are those relationships that are so pivotal for women, for business people in general, but in particular for women, because those developmental relationships, the network that we have, the mentors that we have, help us be informed about ourselves, right? We know women tend to not get as much quality feedback to help guide our career progression. And the networks that we have that help us understand about our business, think more broadly about ourselves as well, so that we have the information that we need to manage ourselves and manage our careers in an effective way.
Interesting. So I want to talk about mentoring and networking too. And I know you were part of an article, a CNBC piece where you said that you need to own your career 100%. And so let's talk about professional networking. And I'm sure in talking with many of these women, it can be daunting to attend an event where you just don't know anybody. And I'm wondering, what is your recommendation for people when they're stepping out for the beginning of their networking journey to start up a conversation in an event where they know literally no one?
Right. Well, when we think about networking, isn't it interesting, Kathleen? We automatically think of being in a room full of strangers and kind of passing out business cards. And that's part of it, right? So I think adopting a curious mindset, right? Just asking a person a question about what they were curious about learning from this event. Why did they come? I mean, just some fundamental questions. Oftentimes, when people think about networking and their lack of comfort with it, it's because they think they need to be telling a lot of people things rather than being curious about the people that they're around. But networking is more than just being in that room full of strangers. It's really thinking about who are the people that I need to have kind of help me round out my perspective. For many of the women that are in our programs, and our programs are designed for high potential women, they're extremely capable, brilliant women. But no matter how smart you are, no matter how capable you are, you only know what you know. And that can be very limiting. So your network, if you think about your network, really needs to map out and complement your perspective. And in some ways also to challenge your perspective, right? What do you need to relearn? What do you need to think differently about? You know, when I worked in organizations, one of the first persons that I reached out to was the controller. I wanted to make sure that I had a strong relationship with the controller because I wanted to understand what were the numbers people were paying attention to. What did I need to kind of infuse in my conversation to get people's attention, right? So I think when we think about our network, it's about how diverse is it? Do I have people who think differently than me, who can really challenge my thinking on situations so that I can be better prepared for the work that I'm doing? And so being curious about not what you think, but what other people are seeing is probably the most important element for networking.
Yes, good advice. And you also mentioned that people often overlook the networking opportunities at their current employer. And in that same piece, you say you need to build those relationships with key influencers, as you did with the controller, that can give you opportunities that will help you grow. And I know I've read that you've agree with me on, I agree with you on this, is that historically men have been much better at this than women. And I like you, what I try to do is to pull women out from their shadows and get out of the office. But you've written that women don't often step up and advocate for themselves at work. And I'm wondering, where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from a number of places. What we hear a lot from the women in our programs, right, is like when there's a position that's posted or a position that becomes available, they'll look at the 10 requirements, assess that they have 2 of the 10, and say, oh, well, I couldn't possibly apply for that role. Where often men will look at it and go, gee, I think I can do it. Let me have a conversation about it. So when I talked earlier about those self-limiting behaviors, that's one of them. The other piece of it often is, too, that we don't often have the role models in those roles that would help us reshape our thinking about our capability of doing that role. I just interviewed a senior leader, and she was talking about in her early career, she was offered this position and it required a lot of travel. And she said to her manager, I can't possibly do that job because I have small children at home. You know, I don't really want to be away from them. And I see how this gentleman is doing this job. I don't think I can do it that way. And her boss said to her, I really do think you can do this job. And I'm not asking you to do it the way he did it. I'm asking you to do the job the way that you do it. You think it needs to be done. And so oftentimes I think women limit their view. Instead of seeing the potential or how they can contribute, they look at how others, mostly our male colleagues, and think, well, I can't do that.
It's crazy. Shame on us, right?
You know, and I think because of that, right, it's that fear of failure. So what if I put myself out there and, you know, I'm not that successful? Or, you know, I was reading a quote by Adam Grant. We hear a lot of women talk about the imposter syndrome. And really that's, you know, our self-view, right? We're afraid that this job, this situation will reveal to the world that I'm just not all that. But if people are telling you that there's a value to what you're bringing, you should believe them. And you should explore, you know, how can, you know, if I'm thinking about advancing in marketing, and these are the jobs that I've had, you know, what are the things I need to be thinking about to make sure that I'm, you know, building my experiences and my competencies so that eventually I can be like head of the marketing department. What should I be thinking about? Those are the types of questions that we need to be asking, you know, our leaders, our managers, so that we're informed about how we develop ourselves.
You know, it's interesting you talk about the imposter syndrome. I heard a story on NPR last week, and the article was it was called "Use These Tips to Unlock and Embrace the Power to Schmooze." The guest reminded us to be authentic because they said if they hire you and you are play acting, the whole imposter syndrome, right? Then it's not going to be the job for you. And I started thinking about that, and I thought, as I was early in my career and really even starting my business, my own company, there were all sorts of stories that I was telling myself. You know, I'm too young, I'm too short, I am just desperate, I need a project to pay the rent, I just need somebody to take a chance on me. And I know that I'm not the only one that tells themselves these stories. And in your book, Relationships Matter, you address, and you just mentioned a little bit, you address how to remain authentic while building these strategic relationships. And so how do you help women overcome these stories, which quite honestly are not true most of the time?
It is funny. We sell ourselves a story that, maybe at one time in our life was true, but you can rewrite that story. So I think, is so important about authenticity. We need to understand that our authenticity, who we are, how we work, what we contribute, is something that is always evolving. How you are authentic when you are in your early career stage is different than your mid-career stage and different when you're an executive. And so what we do in our programs is really help women gain clarity. We often hear that the women are confident. They're much more confident as a result of their participation in our programs. And I don't feel that anyone could help you be confident. That's very much an internal process.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with looking at, what are the attributes, the skills, the competencies that I bring to my role in the organization. And this is where it's important to really take a step back and reflect of all the things that I do, all the skills, my strengths that I bring to my organization. What is that subset of skills that when I'm using these skills, when I'm doing this work, it really, this may sound light and I don't mean it this way, it sparks joy. I really like doing this work. And then how do I leverage those competencies to map out a career strategy for myself? Because so often, if we're not advocating for ourselves, and we see this happening so much to women, I don't want to talk about myself, so I'm just going to let my work speak for me. Well, you can be in a role that you are very functionally capable of doing, maybe even exceptional at doing that work, but you get tired of it. It sparks no joy in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can end up with a career that you're very functional, you're capable, you're probably getting good feedback, but you're not seeing anything that's exciting you in the work that you're doing. Versus if I can stay focused on those things that really I enjoy when I'm in these types of environments doing this type of work, then I have clarity of my purpose. I'm clear on the impact that I have on others, my team, my organization, my customers. When I have that clarity of purpose, understand the clarity of the value that I bring, I can be more confident about the work that I'm doing and what I don't want to do, right? So it all feeds into that, but it's having that going through the exercise of getting clear and then constantly over time taking a pulse to make sure you're going in the right direction. What other things do I need to be doing? So that ebb and flow of reflection and practice is so important to maintaining that confidence and that clarity.
Well, and I would imagine too, I know I get calls from lots of people, men and women, who are looking to make a career transition. They don't have that clarity.
Right.
They don't know what the 10 to 15 things are that they do better than anyone else in their role. And I push back on them that they've got to go get that, because if you're going to go out there and network and have coffee for the sake of having coffee, right, then you're just going to have a lot of coffee and you're not going to have those rich conversations. But I think that the clarity to be able to articulate what that passion is, because as a recruiter, companies are not necessarily focusing on experience as much as they used to. They are now looking at more skills and things that people bring to the party, skills and experiences that they bring to the party. And I think so it sounds like the work that you're doing allows these individuals to be able to really nail down what those skills and experiences are so that they can tell their story and communicate their brand, and then be able to go on that scavenger career hunt that Marcus Buckingham talks about to get to that place that brings them joy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and Daniel Goleman talks about, he calls it flow, right? When you're in that spot where you're leveraging your skills and you see the impact that it's having. And being open to, especially over the past 2.5 years, it's an ever-changing business climate. It never was a static business climate. I think the last 2 years taught us that, you need to be aware that, change is constant. And so who within your network is keeping you apprised of some of the changes that might be on the horizon, so that you can be thinking about that and preparing yourself, not only the challenges, but also the opportunities that change presents.
Yeah, I agree. And on that note, let's stop here. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Dr. Rosina Racioppi, the CEO and president of Women Unlimited, Rosina talks about the role mentorship plays in developing the next generation of female leaders.
I see mentoring being beyond just the self-development, but really helping the women think more broadly about the organizations and how to navigate them more successfully.
This has been Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy. To connect with Kathleen or to learn more about recruitment research, go to duffygroup.com.